button. It's recording. Great. Welcome to Google Tools for Teaching and Learning. Just so you know, this is best suited for grades 3 through 12. A lot of the examples I give are kind of grades 3 through 12 types of examples, but there's lots of things in here. These tools are not necessarily only for 3rd grade and up. I've seen them used lots of times with kinder, 1st, and 2nd. So if you are not a grade 3 through 12 teacher, don't worry. Stay, get some ideas. The point of the session today is to really get some ideas and that kind of stuff. It's not to walk away knowing how to use 8 different tools. You will not feel that way. I'll tell you that right now. But it's to have, kind of a space to get some ideas, to have your box expanded a little bit, like, oh, I didn't know that that tool could do that kind of thing. And then I've got resources and links, and we'll have webinars later with the actual how-to stuff. So think of today like a brainstorming idea, creativity type of session, and then the how-to stuff will come later. Okay. I want to introduce myself. My name is Jessica Pederson. I am a digital learning integration designer, which I always joke is all the buzzwords in one title. I work for the Department of Technology, and I specialize in Google Tools. So that is my specialty. I am in my forte today. Allison is my moderator. Allison, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Allison Rothman. I'm also in the Department of Technology, and my focus is on online and blended learning, which is where we are, all of us, right now.
Yes.
I'm also going to be working the Q&A and the chat. So if we can really keep the questions in the Q&A, then I have one thread in order to keep up with. And I know there's so many of you. I'm going to do my best. I know something's going to get lost, in which case we will do our best to address it. We're going to provide you with a ton of resources right now. Jessica will speak quickly. We will be recording the sessions so that you can slow her down later at your convenience. She doesn't have a slow down button apparently, but
she tries really hard.
She does try. All right, and we're going to do our best to get to all your questions. And if we don't get to them today, we have office hours. I'll be getting the links into these fields as well.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. So Allison kind of introduced actually several of our norms at once. We've got 3 norms today. The first norm is what she was talking about, that questions go into the Q&A, and then the chat will actually use for specific activities. So the first thing I asked you to do in the chat was introduce yourself. Many of you did that. That's awesome. The chat then we're going to kind of pause on, and we will come back to it, and we'll only use it when I tell you that we've put a link in there, or that I'm going to have a question we'll answer in there. So when you have a question that you have, that goes into that Q&A box. So make sure you've got both of those, you know where both of those spaces are. Allison is going to do her best to answer as many questions as she can in that Q&A. We've also set up so that you can see the questions that other people have answered. So it might not be bad to kind of look through there and kind of see, oh, they have the same question. I'll watch for what that answer is. So that's the first norm, is about the chat and the Q&A spots. My next norm is to be ready to think outside the box. So I'm going to show you 4 pretty standard common Google tools, and we'll talk about what they're usually used for, and then I've got some ideas. Again, this is kind of an idea sparking type of session, not so much a how-to. And so, I'll share some of those like more commonly known Google tools, and then I've got 4 tools that you might have heard of, but you might not have. And all 8 tools I'm sharing today, all SFUSD staff and students have access to those tools. You can use any of the tools I'm going to share today with students. And then my last norm for today, in that light blue bubble on the bottom, is to take what you can today and come back for more later. You will not be a master of all Google things after this session today. I'm pretty good. I'm not that good. So you're going to get hopefully just some ideas today. If you walk away with one new idea, that was my sole goal for this session. You will probably not, probably have lots of questions. You won't know how to do this idea you have yet, and that's okay. We are having many webinars coming up about more deeper into these specific tools. And so, the how-to part will come later. Right now, it's just like the idea and the sparking. We're going to have an idea shared later. We get ideas from other people. This is actually my favorite topic lately. I did this at NTO, New Teacher Orientation. Every time I present this, there's so many great ideas shared. So even if you don't have an idea already when I'm talking, you're going to hear other ideas from other people. So there's no test. There's no expectation you remember everything I say. I do talk kind of fast, and I'm really sorry. I try so hard to slow down. When I call my mom, she's often like, oh, say it again. I didn't catch it. So you're not alone if you feel like I'm talking fast. I am trying to talk slowly, I promise. I have had some questions about the comments and the subtitles. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and address those now while we're talking about norms. These subtitles happen inside of Google Slides. So I'm presenting my Google Slides deck. It's in present mode. I click that present button, so it's showing like a show. And when I move my mouse around, there's this little bar that pops up in the corner. And I've got a button here for captions. So I can turn them on or off by clicking that button. I can also choose if they're on the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen, and I can choose the size. These are extra large captions. I can also go down to large, that shows a few more words on the screen, but you can kind of pick the size that makes sense for you. There's also small, which I think are very hard to see. So I would go no smaller than medium, but I tend to do large. Large is usually my favorite. And so we're recording this right now. You'll be able to watch this recording later, and those captions will show up on the recording because they're part of the Google Slides screen share. So pretty neat little trick, and definitely a thing you can think about using with students. Okay, cool. I want to start and really ground us in an equity frame. There are two pieces to equity that we focus on in the Department of Technology. We focus on equity of access, meaning that students have devices to use, they have apps and tools they can use on those devices that are safe and approved for them to use. And then we focus on equity of opportunity, and that's the type of things that students are asked to do with technology. It's very different to ask students to write an essay than it is to ask them to identify a problem and come up with a proposal and a solution to that problem. Those are very different asks. And equity of opportunity really focuses on having students do much more powerful, critical thinking, communication, collaboration type of things with technology. For the most part, equity of access, we in the Department of Technology will take care of. We are the ones that distribute Chromebooks to your sites so that your students have Chromebooks. We are the ones that approve apps to make sure things are safe for students to use. All the tools I'm going to show today are approved apps that the district has approved for use with students. Equity of opportunity, though, is really, that falls into your hands. You're the ones working with students. You decide the kind of work that they do and the things that they're asked to do. And so that equity of opportunity piece is really what this session is focused on, is how to do more powerful things that are good for learning, that are better for students with specifically using Google tools today. So that's where we're coming from. So again, like I said, I'm going to start with 4 pretty commonly heard of Google tools. You've probably heard of at least most of these first 4 tools, but I'm going to give you some new ideas and ways to use them in a new way. The first one I want to talk about is Google Docs. That's a word processing tool. It's very similar to Microsoft Word if you use Microsoft Word. What's neat about Google Docs is you can have everybody in on the same document. And you can also link to things inside the document. So I can link to the web page and kind of pull people to other places. Google Docs are great for something called hyperdocs. And hyperdocs are I've got the definition here. Basically, it's one single place that takes kids at their own pace through the different pieces of a lesson. And so you would start at the beginning with some sort of hook, some sort of inquiry, something that really gets them kind of their ideas bubbling and like gets them interested in the topic. And then you go through and have them, work on different pieces of the lesson all the way down. But it's all inside of one hub and they're working through it. I've got a link here to learn more about hyperdocs. What I will say is that there is probably not enough time to click on all the links I've given you. And so I would say that this deck, again, is part of that 3rd norm, come back more for later. These links today, I would say, are something to come back more for later. You will be able to continue to access this deck. It is a Google Slides thing, so you can bookmark it and come back to it later. It is linked inside this session in Sched. So if you go back to, or if you're already in, if you scroll down to where the description is, there's a bolded thing that says session resources. That's this deck. You can come back to this. This deck is here for you to use. I'm not going to delete it. I'm not going to move it. I'm not going to change it. So feel free to come back to that later. That's kind of part of that norm, is coming back to these links. But this link in here about hyperdocs, I've got shows some examples. It shows some templates, some ideas, so you can kind of like wrap your head around what the heck is a hyperdoc. But that self-paced aspect is really nice because you have students that will fly through the first part and they get stuck on the second part, or students who will take a little more time on the first part and then fly through the second part. Or you have students that just will fly through the whole thing, and you can have anchor activities as part of that hyperdoc. So it's really nice to let students kind of work at their own pace. They don't feel like they're behind. They don't feel like they're getting held back by other people. Another thing that docs are great for is choice boards. And studies show time and time again that students really benefit from having choices. We see greater completion of homework and schoolwork when there's choices and what they're required to do, they get to pick. We see greater interest and engagement in the materials when they get to pick something about it. So giving them that choice is a really easy way to get them more invested in their own learning. And choice boards can be where they pick how they want to show what they know, whether they want to draw it or write about it or record themselves talking about it. You can also have it be where the choice board has them pick what kind of practice activities they want to do to practice a skill or a bit of content. You can also have a choice board, have them pick, which thing they want to learn about. You've got different aspects of, perhaps you're studying, a different culture, a different, maybe the ancient Egyptians or something like that. You can have them pick like, oh, do I want to focus on food, clothing? You can have them pick different things to be able to kind of, get that choice in what they're interested in. And what choice boards do is they kind of lead students to make a certain number of choices or to choose certain things. So for example, you can set up a choice board like a tic-tac-toe board. And so it's a 3x3 grid, just like a tic-tac-toe board. And you tell students they need to make a tic-tac-toe. They can pick any tic-tac-toe they want, go across, go diagonal, go down, you can go up the middle, whatever direction tic-tac-toe they want, but they have to do 3 in a row. And so they get to kind of like weigh which ones are going to be a better fit for them, which ones they're more interested in. The same idea with bingo. I've done it with bingo. A 5x5 grid with a free space in the middle because I'm not a monster. And they could, pick their bingo. Do they want to go across and do those 5 activities, go diagonal and do those 5, whichever thing is going to stick out to them the best. You can also, with a bingo board, challenge some of your more advanced students or quicker working students to go for blackout. And can you do all of them in this time? And so a bingo board often works really well for a choice board. I've also seen choice boards set up as like a 1 per column. You can think of it like a menu that, in a restaurant, you might choose an appetizer, a main, a side, and a dessert. You can do that same. You pick 1 from this column, 1 from this column, 1 from this column, 1 from this column, however many columns you want. And they get to, again, have that voice and choice in what they're going to do. But there's lots of other ways to do choice boards. And we don't have a whole lot of examples of choice boards. I don't have one linked here, but if you Google choice boards, you will find templates and examples for all sorts of things. And so like choice boards math, you're going to find tons of examples. Google Docs is also really commonly used for written work. It's very common for people to use it for essays, for notes, for lists, or that kind of thing that we think of a lot of times as like writing a paper is what we use Google Docs for. But they can also be really beautiful. There's a lot of like tips and tricks inside of Google Docs to use things like hidden tables and that kind of stuff to really make Google Docs beautiful and interesting to look at, that it's not just a bunch of text on a page. So I've got linked here, again, something probably to check out later, but I've got linked here some really beautiful Google Docs. I did a training actually last year at Digital District Day just on diving deeper in Docs. And someone said it should be called Google Docs, surprisingly beautiful. So feel free to check those out at some point in time, because you can really make Google Docs more interesting than just text. And then down at the bottom of the slide, you'll see this on every slide. I have links directly to resources about this tool. So I've linked our Google Docs webpage for educators. That webpage has resources that we have made at SFUSD. It has resources that Google has made. And it has resources that other teachers have posted on blogs and that kind of stuff, things that we have heard about and have really liked. And we've got those linked there as like other ways you can use Google Docs. Like there's a lot of articles like 10 things to do with students in Google Docs, right? So there's like lots and lots of ideas there as well. So feel free to check that out at some point in time. The other thing linked down here is our Google Docs page for families. So if you're using Google Docs with students this year and families are struggling to support their student at home, or you want to make sure you have the extra kind of like support there for them, the Google Docs webpage for families is built in the district website. So it is families can translate it. And you can, give that to your families to kind of, help. It shows like, here are some common buttons. Here's how you turn a Google Doc into Google Classroom, how you turn it into Google Classroom, things like that. So feel free to share those families web pages with families. They are meant for families to use. Okay, Google Slides. I think Google Slides is one of the most underrated common Google tools. I use it all the time as a teacher for all sorts of things. So Google Slides is a slide presentation tool, very similar to PowerPoint. I'm using it right now to present. That's how I've got my captions, is it's built into Google Slides as part of like a presentation tool. But Google Slides works really well with multimedia. We see that like vision boards or any sort of like collage type thing, digital posters, that kind of stuff. You can insert video clips from YouTube. You can insert text boxes. You can actually now insert audio into a Google Slide, so students can record themselves talking about something or reading something, and they can put the audio clip, it's a little like speaker button you click on. And you can also insert images. It's a really great multimedia type of space. And a lot of times when we look at a slide deck, we see multiple slides going down. There is no rule that you have to have multiple slides. You can have just one slide and everything happens on that one slide. Google Slides then is also great for choice boards. One of the options inside of Slides is you can actually link to another slide in the same deck. So when I go to insert a hyperlink using the insert menu, one of the options in that little window that pops up is slides in this presentation. So maybe one of my choice board squares in my tic-tac-toe, one of my tic-tac-toe squares actually links down to a slide later in the deck with the instructions for that activity. So that works really well to like do stuff inside the deck. I saw someone ask, like, can you show us how to do that? Sadly, I wish this was like an all-day workshop. We would dive deep into every single one and practice it. This is kind of like an idea generation, but we currently have a webinar in the works. It's planned. It's going to happen in mid-September, mid to late September. Of like how to go more interactive with Google Slides. And I will, if you join that webinar or if you watch the recording of the webinar, I will go through how to link to slides down. So that information is coming. It's just not coming today. So again, choice boards are great in Google Slides. Another thing that's great in Google Slides is something that I call one-by-one activities. And what that is, I've got an example, and it might actually be helpful in this one case to click on that link of that example to kind of see it as I describe it. Just make sure you come back if you pop over to that other deck. But in that deck, I've got, I think it's like 35 identical slides. They all look exactly the same. They all have a coordinate plane. It looks like graph paper. And then they all have like an arrow, a line on it. And what I did when I did one-by-one activities is I would have all the students hop into the same deck. Everybody's got a slide. I tended to go ahead and put their names on it first just so they went and found their slide. But if you have older students, say everybody grab a slide, put your name on it. That's your slide for today. And then we would do a practice activity. So I would say, in this case, the coordinate plane, I might say like, we're all gonna graph the function y equals x plus 2. And so then students would take on their own slide and drag their arrow to make it match y equals x plus 2. And then I can go through and look at everybody's slides as they're doing it and kind of like note that, oh, I should, check in with this student. Oh, this student's they're already done. They're really fast, whatever it is that I need to know. And then you can say, okay, next one, we're going to do y equals 3x minus 1. And, again, see how they're graphing and stuff. It's kind of similar to if you've maybe ever used whiteboards in class where students write on a whiteboard and hold it up and you can kind of do a quick like scan to make sure everybody's got it. That's it's very similar to that. It's just kind of like a digital option there. I taught high school Spanish, and so I actually used it to do like locations. So I put like a classroom scene and then I put classroom objects on the scene, and again made the slide once and then copied it all the way down. And I'd say like the stapler is on top of the desk, and then I can like kind of go through and see like where a kid's putting the stapler or if they're moving the book, like that told me something else. So the way to make it so that everybody can edit it, I saw someone ask that question, is to share it, giving students edit access. So there's a big yellow button up in the upper right-hand corner of slides that says share, and you can share it with other people. And Google Classroom actually makes it really easy to get all the kids in on the same deck if you do it through Google Classroom. Yeah, another way to use Google Slides is for creating books or doing journaling. Again, they are great for multimedia type stuff. So it's a great space to have students like, basically make a slide that is you. Show me the kind of music that you like. Again, they can insert a video. Show me the cover of your favorite book. Things like that. It can be a really great space because it's very multimedia. But it also then works really well for creating a book. Instead of thinking it like slides in a presentation, think of it like pages in a book. And so as you flip through the deck, through the book, it's going to, you can think of it, as like different pages where they can put pictures in with their text boxes. They can record themselves reading the book for that page. That sort of thing. It's really easy to make, to think of a slide deck as like a book instead of a deck. And then I've got those same resources down below about the page for educators and the page for families for you to review later. Okay, I'm on slide 7. We're going to talk about Google Sheets. Google Sheets is the spreadsheet tool. It's very similar to Excel. Now, I know that for a long time, had an aversion. I avoided spreadsheets like the plague. I was like, if I did not teach math, so I was like, I don't need a spreadsheet. There's nothing I need a spreadsheet for. And I would just really like to challenge that, that notion that spreadsheets are only for math class or they're only for science and data. Students really need to be interacting with spreadsheets. Many, many, many jobs, store manager, many, many jobs require students to be comfortable looking at information in a table and being able to navigate a table and find information from a table. And so spreadsheets do that for you. They're just a giant table. You don't have to put numbers in them. You can put text in them instead. Google Forms actually talks to sheets. That when you have a Google form, that's like a survey, that students fill out a survey, that information actually comes into a sheet. And so when students type words in there, those words come into that sheet. So it doesn't have to be numbers. So anything that needs a table, it's great to have students get used to, like, oh, the columns are letters and the rows are numbers. So cell E6 is in column E, row 6, being able to locate those kinds of things. Those are just really general good skills for students to learn. So I would encourage you and challenge you to see if there's a way that you can include a Google Sheet in something you're doing with students, even if you don't teach math or science. They are also good for self-checking puzzles. There's something called conditional formatting in Sheets, where basically you tell it, if the cell has a certain thing, then do this. And so I can say, if the cell has the word cat, turn purple. And if the cell doesn't have the word cat, it just stays white. Same thing with numbers. I can say if the number is between 6 and 12, turn green. I can tell it to do different things based on what's in that cell. So you can use that to do self-checking stuff, that like when the box turns green, they know they've got the right answer in there. Obviously, you can also use it for data analysis. I touched on this a little bit already, that forms actually feed into Sheets. So you can have students create a form and survey, maybe, ask friends and family what their favorite animal is, and then they can graph the results right inside of Sheets. It's very, very easy to do that right inside of Sheets. I think it's on the webpage for educators. I have a link to something where it's got first graders analyzing data in Google Sheets. So never too early to start with a sheet. You can also use Sheets to make checklists. And so a new thing that came out in Sheets is you can insert checkboxes into a cell. And so I can have a column of checkboxes, and then each row, maybe I have a task, I can put links inside of a cell. So I can say, go to this page and do this thing. And then when they're done, they come back and they click the checkbox, and that checks it. And so it's really easy, again, to make those checklists, and it's just like using a table. So that's a really cool use of Sheets as well. So long story short, my challenge to you is to use Sheets for something this year with students. Okay, Google Drawings, fourth kind of common tool. This one's a little bit less common. You may not have heard of this one, but Google Drawings is kind of like a graphic design tool. So it's good for, again, manipulating shapes and pictures. You can put text boxes in, similar to slides, but there is no way to insert audio into a drawing, unfortunately. So if that audio piqued your interest, stick with slides. So it's really great for vision boards, again, like collages type stuff, digital posters, having an image and text. It's also great for graphic design. I use it a lot to create headers. Google Forms and even Google Classroom can have a custom header image, and you can build that inside of Google Drawings and then put it in your form or your classroom. I've also used it to create logos or icons. The Digital District Day banner that you may be familiar with seeing by now, I made it in Google Drawings. It's really easy to do that kind of stuff in there. It's also great for drag and drop activities. So for example, I saw someone in science use it where it was like the picture of the human heart, and then they had text boxes with different like parts of the human heart, and the students dragged the text boxes to label the different parts. So that was a really neat tool to see, having students like drag and manipulate something. I saw something where I want to say it was like a first or second grade, maybe they were classifying types of shapes into different categories. So like a quadrilateral versus other things. So they drag the shape into where it belongs. So you can do lots of drag and drop stuff inside of inside of Google Drawings. And then if you're looking for more of like a drawing type of tool, like a scribble type tool, there is a scribble tool in Google Drawings, but it's not super great. Chrome Canvas is a really great Google tool for drawing. They've got different pens, like you can use a marker or chalk or spray paint. They've got different layers and that kind of stuff. So I would, if you're thinking more about like a drawing type of, art aspect, I would consider using Chrome Canvas. I have linked, even though this is the Google Drawings slide, I've linked in our resources about Chrome Canvas, both for educators and for families. So feel free to check those out later. And then I've got my 2 resources for drawings, for educators and for families. Okay, we just went through 4 tools. So I wanted to pause here and just give you a chance to kind of idea share. You may have heard me say that I really love doing this topic because so many great ideas come out of it. I feel like I get to steal all of your really great ideas. So if you're interested, we'd love to hear your ideas. Are in the chat, so not the Q&A, in the chat. Go ahead and type your answers in. Are there any tools or activities so far, things you've heard, a tool that sparked your interest, an activity you thought, oh, maybe I'll try that, that you think you might try with students? And Allison pointed out here, please, as to where you're gonna put that. Again, you're not committing to anything. This is not like I'm gonna go and check in on you, like, did you use Sheets? You said you would, but just a place to kind of, again, get some ideas from other people. How are some things that you can, what are some ways that you could maybe adapt one of the things I said for your subject area for your students? Okay, I'm seeing some Google Slides, Google Drawings, drag and drop labeling. That's a really good one. Google Sheets, yes, use the sheets, use the sheets. So excited. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of like, these are ideas and you don't have a lot of how-to yet. They are coming, I promise. We are expanding our webinar options. In the spring, we offered a lot of basics, and we know that some of the teachers now are ready for, how do I do more things with Sheets? How do I do more things with slides? They are coming, I promise. So keep your eye on the PD counter. Somebody asked how Sheets is different from Excel. Excel is a program that lives on your computer, and for the most part, unless you have Office 365, which costs extra, only you can edit the spreadsheet at a time. Whereas like Google Sheets, you can have 2 people on it at once. So I actually helped a principal earlier last week with her spreadsheet. She was trying to calculate something, and so we were both in the spreadsheet, and we were on a Meet call, and we were talking about the spreadsheet, both of us typing in there at once to make the formula. So it's really easy to share things. When you're using Google tools, you can put multiple people in on the same space and they can work together. Tracy asked about MP4 files being brought into Google Slides. Yes. Well, yes. So I believe that's a video, right? I don't know about super large ones. You might just want to upload it to YouTube first. You can upload it to YouTube and make it unlisted so you can't search for it. And then you could insert it really easily into your slides instead of having the slides have to host that big file. Have YouTube do the work instead. Okay, so many great ideas. Thank you for sharing. I hope you had a chance to also kind of like look and see what other people put. Again, this is like more of like an idea sparking session to kind of get the juices flowing. And like I said, the how-to will come later. Resources are linked, check those out later. Again, that norm is that you don't master everything at all at once today. You will not be a master of 8 Google tools, but just some things to like get you interested and motivated, know what the options are. You might not have explored Google Docs until you knew it could be used for choice boards or things like that. Okay, we're going to jump into the next segment of 4 tools. These are tools that you may not have heard of, or if you have, you may not quite know what they're for. And this is actually my favorite part of the presentation. So I'm going to start with Google My Maps. You've likely used Google Maps before to get directions to a place, to look up restaurants around you, to find a coffee shop, that sort of thing. And when you search in regular Google Maps, again, I'm going to find a coffee place nearby. Maybe I need a donut. I can type in donuts, right? And it's going to pop up little pins of places that sell donuts. And I can click on the pin and I can see information about it, right? That's regular Google Maps. You probably used it before. My Maps allows you to create a custom Google map. So that means you pick where the pins are and you pick what shows up when you click on that pin. So what we see used for a lot is creating those custom maps that you set a pin down, you can choose what text goes with that pin, what pictures go with that pin. You can actually link in videos with that pin. You can choose what color the pin is, what icon the pin has on its like circular part. The top of a pin is like a circle and then it like goes down to a point. That circle part, you can pick which icon is there. Maybe it's a star, maybe it's a teacup, whatever makes sense. You can, all sorts of things you can customize about it. And what that does is, again, allows you to make a custom map. And that's at any scale. It can be a custom map of a city, of a block, of the world, of a country, whatever size you want it to be. And what that allows you to do is, again, you can use it for exploring geographical places. You know, you can measure distance between two places. You can actually have it show the directions. So you can have it, you can put, you know, one pin, another pin, and have it show the directions in between. I used this when I taught Spanish. I did something I called the Amazing Race. And it was where they created Google My Maps about like points of interest. They each team got a Spanish speaking country, and they had to do directions from, you know, one place of interest to another place of interest in their country. And we practice like telling directions and giving directions and that kind of stuff. Another thing you can use My Maps for is storytelling. And this is a specific webinar topic that is coming, My Maps for storytelling. So if this is piquing your interest, keep your eye out for that. And basically you can create a map that follows a character's journey through a story. So I've seen it done where as the character moves to different places in the story, they put a pin there and they write a summary of what happened, maybe include a relevant picture that makes sense to go with that description, maybe a video if it makes sense, and they tell the story. I've also seen it done where it's more like a journal for that character. So they imagine that they are that character and they write that description in first person. What am I as the character feeling? What are things that are happening to me or to people around me? And it can be done that way too. So it can be used to tell a story, but also could be used for creative writing. So instead of writing a story in Google Docs and it's just text all the way down, you could actually tell a story through My Maps. The first pin is the first, maybe, you know, the first thing that happens. And in there, again, third person or first person, talking about all the stuff that's happening in the story at that place, and then moving to the next place. And again, you can attach pictures, videos, that kind of stuff. Students can tell their own story. You know, where am I from? Where have I moved to? Where have I lived in different places? You know, they can also have them tell their own story. Where have I traveled to? That kind of stuff, if it makes sense for your population. You can also use Google My Maps for crowdsourcing. We use it a lot. Well, so the central office, when we used to be able to go get lunch and we all worked here, we had a My Map that was, you know, kind of shared amongst us that had different places around here for lunch. And you could filter it by, you know, Thai places or sub shops or like that kind of stuff. And so it was like places people had gone and had like added to the map because they, you know, it was tasty food. And so it's like a way to get ideas of like where around here to go get lunch. But you could do it with your students that like, where's the best place to get ice cream? Or where's your favorite park? Where were you born? And maybe a bunch of the pins are in San Francisco. I see someone said like, what about using it for physical education as an exercise journal? Yes, that's an amazing idea. Track your exercise, that in this place, I did this thing. And then I, went over here, I jogged maybe, and I did this thing, whatever. Yes. It's also great for visually demonstrating information. So I gave the example here on this slide. I'm on slide 10, 10 cities with the highest graduation rates. So that could have normally been in a table, right? I could list out the cities and the rates, right? That could be a table. But I could also show that information more visually to like look for patterns between where those cities are located. And so I can put pins on the map in each of those cities and have information about it. And then you can, look at the whole map and see like, oh, I see a bunch of these cities that have the highest grade, like a bunch of these cities actually are in New York State, or I could see that a bunch of them are on the coasts, or whatever trends I'm kind of seeing. I also gave the example here of locations where political candidates have visited. Again, a way to kind of look at trends in data, looking at it from a geographical lens as a way to like show that, oh, there's a trend here. They spend a lot of time in Iowa and then on the coasts, or whatever. So lots of things you can use My Maps for, just besides, getting directions or that kind of stuff. So I do love My Maps. And like I said, a My Maps for storytelling is coming. It is coming. That's a webinar that we're going to do. Okay, arts and culture. And Allison is smiling because she knows this is my favorite tool in the entire deck. I'm going to fangirl just a little bit. Arts and culture, I think, has a slightly misleading name. A lot of people think like, oh, that's just for art teachers, or like, oh, that's just for like, classes where you study culture, like a world language class or like a history class. That's the only places you'd use this. And I have to say, hands down, that is not true. Arts and culture is basically, it was an experiment. Google was like, what if we take museums and art and culture and we add technology to it? What would happen? And so arts and culture is what happened. And it's only gotten better over time. So when you go to arts and culture, I recommend like setting a timer And like, cause every time I go to arts and culture, I like get sucked into a rabbit hole. And then a half an hour later, I'm like, oh shoot, I should have been doing something else. So I would set a timer when you go there, but it's so easy to like click through and find all this cool stuff. You can explore in with different areas. So you can search by an art movement and see that movement, you know, what different pieces influence that, what painters or artists were part of that movement. You can search by mediums, like I could look just for sculptures. You can search by artist and see like what were their influences, what were things that were happening in history around that time. You can look at by place. So like I could search San Francisco and see like what are different arts and cultural movements and things, historical things that have happened here in San Francisco. I can look for historical figures and see like what are different places and different things that have impacted them. I can look at historical events and see how they influenced art and vice versa. And then I think one of the biggest strengths it has actually is curated collections. So you can type anything into that Explorer and it's going to find collections that have to do with that. Either collections that museums have created and pulled stuff together and said, these things all fit this theme, or even collections like you can make a collection. You can pull together collections and be like, this fits this theme. So the collections are super cool to kind of like poke around and see, you know, what people have pulled together, what museums have pulled together. You can also take tours. So I know that we can't take even like field trips to, you know, museums here in San Francisco right now, but you know, with arts and culture, you can actually take a tour of the Louvre. You can take students on a virtual field trip to a place you never would have been able to take them even in a normal school year. So you might have used something called Street View in Google Maps. That's where it like looks like you're on the street and you can click the arrow to like go further down the street, right? You can look and see on the street, you know, different parts of what's on that street. They have Google Street View for several museums. Museums have partnered with Google and they've created the Street View. So again, you can like walk through the Louvre and like turn and look at a painting and stand there as long as you like, because it's you know, it's a website. Like it doesn't matter how long you stand there, and then you can like look the other way and, you know, walk further into the museum. So it's really neat to kind of just let people like poke around and look at it. You can like zoom in and look closer. Such a cool thing. They also have partnered with specific museums to do high definition imagery of certain specific artworks. For example, Starry, Starry Night is one of them. And so you can zoom like way in and see like the brush strokes. And I have to say, like, I know that it was painted by a real human, but you kind of forget because you only ever see like the faraway prints, right? Where it's not that, you know, you don't see the detail of the real painting unless you go in person. And I've never been able to go in person. And so, you know, with this, you can zoom in and be like, oh my goodness, a real human painted this. It like makes it so real all of a sudden. So that's like super neat to see that. And then you can also interact with 360-degree videos, both of places and of like performances is what I'm going to call it. So one good example of this is like a symphony is performing a song and they've recorded a 360-degree video of the symphony playing the song. So it's like the symphony's performance, but it's like you're sitting there. So the video, you start playing the video, and at any point in the video, I can just turn and watch what's happening over here during the video. And then if I want, I can turn and watch what's happening over here. I can look behind me. It's 360-degree video. And so, and the video keeps playing. So like when I turn, then the symphony is still playing the song. I'm just now watching the trombone player. Or maybe I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna watch the flute player. So like really neat. You can pause it and like rewind, and now I wanna watch the flute player during that part. Really cool. I highly recommend checking that out. Another thing that Google Arts and Culture is great for, that, you know, if like the paintings and like the history and stuff didn't quite pique your interest, maybe ELA or something, or, you know, math or something like that, you can do research with primary sources in Google Arts and Culture. They have flyers, they have posters, they have letters that have been written by, you know, famous people, you know, from histories past. And so you can actually use that to have students, you know, use those as primary sources and sources of information. I saw a really cool activity where they asked students to select 7 primary sources that supported the topic for their paper, and then asked them to go down to 5. And they had to explain why they chose certain primary sources over others. And when I was doing it myself, like just to practice it and see what it was like, it was really hard to like pick just 5. I was like, but I like 6 of them. So you can use those primary sources as a way to do research and for students to use as sources in the work they're doing, what they're going to turn in. And then lastly, you can create your own collections. I saw questions about like, how do I add Google Arts and Culture to Classroom? What I would do is I would create a collection And so you do that by favoriting things. So as you go through those little heart icons, you can click on to favorite it. And then once you favorite it, you can pull it together into a single collection, and you can share that collection via a URL. So you can, again, you can create a collection for students to kind of go through and look at. Students can also create a collection and turn that URL of their collection into you. There's, multiple ways to have, that gathering space and share it with other people. The other thing is that there is a Google Arts and Culture app for mobile devices, so phones and tablets, iPads, that kind of stuff. And the Arts and Culture app offers some extra things that you don't find on the website. So it might not be a bad idea if, you may not be able to have students do that now because not every student has a phone or a tablet perhaps, unless you're working with like a one-to-one model or where your students did take, those kinds of devices home. But if you, maybe when you're back in school and you've got an iPad cart or things like that, there's actually really cool things in there. So I would recommend checking that out at some point in time just to poke around. One of the things is building your own gallery. So it uses the camera on your device. And when you look through the camera, it shows you the room you're in, but you can place paintings on the wall. So it's like a virtual gallery in the room you're in. So that's a pretty cool tool in there. Okay, I'm gonna get off the arts and culture boat, but seriously, check it out, but also set a timer. Okay, Google Jamboard. Jamboard is a whiteboarding tool. And so it's good to know that there are two kinds of Jamboard. There are physical Jamboards. Those are like TVs on wheels. They only run the Jamboard software. They're very expensive. SFUSD does not own a single physical Jamboard device. But the Jamboard software that those things run is free and you can absolutely use. And that's what we're going to talk about is that software. You can use it in, with any internet-enabled device. So your laptop, a Chromebook, it works on iPads, it works on phones. Phones are a little small, so it's a little hard to use on phones, but you can, there's a Jamboard app, you can use it on phones. And so this whiteboarding tool, because it works like a website or like an app, you can use it and it works like a Google file does. So one of the things we talked about earlier with docs and sheets and slides is you can have multiple people in on the same slide deck or multiple people in on the same spreadsheet. You can have multiple people in on the same Jamboard. So it's really great for brainstorming, getting a group of people into the same Jamboard and like people adding ideas and that kind of stuff. I would say that smaller groups are better. I would not put 30 kids in on a Jamboard. That will be chaos. But a group of like 3, 4, maybe 5 is a great number to stick in on a Jamboard themselves. And they can add little post-it notes for text. They can insert images. They can add links to other stuff like websites or documents. They can do stickers. The kids love the stickers. And then there's also a pen tool where they can like draw on it. So they can like circle an idea or, if it made sense to draw something out, you can, kind of sketch something out. Somebody I see in the chat asked if we're limited to 3 Jamboards. That's not true. That is true of Padlet. That's a different kind of tool. Jamboard, you can make as many Jamboards as you want. They're called jams. A Jamboard is called a jam. And so you can make as many jams as you want to. There is no limit to the number of jams you can have. I have like 60 at this point. So as many as you want to have. Jamboard's also great for a group workspace. So that same idea of like brainstorming. If you wanted a group to kind of like create a rough draft or a plan together, jams can have multiple pages. And so you can have a page like this is for our introduction. This is for the first stage of a frog's life where it's eggs. And then this is the tadpole. And that you can have different spaces for each of those. You can also have it where each student has their own space to have their own ideas. So again, a jam has multiple pages. And then Jamboards are great for personal reflection and journaling. So we talked about using Google Slides for that. It's a similar idea, it's just kind of like a different space. In Slides, you'd add a text box to type in. In Jamboard, it's a note that you'd use to type in. So Jamboard it's just like a different way to kind of look at it. It's got like that pen tool, again, they could draw, that kind of stuff. So, Google Slides or Jamboard could both be used for that, journaling, that personal reflection piece. It just kind of depends on what you want it to feel like. Okay, that's Jamboard. And we have a link, we have resources here again for families. So if you're using Jamboard and you've got some, families that are having, have never used it before, or, maybe, need a language other than English, again, those websites translate and you can absolutely share those with families. They're meant for families. Okay, last tool of the 8, Google Keep. Google Keep is basically digital sticky notes. You can do to-do lists, but what's really great about Google Keep is that you can share them. So for example, my partner and I have a Google Keep grocery list. So we both have access to it. It's shared between us. And whenever one of us feels like, you know, oh, I wish we had bananas, we just go add it to the list. And then whoever goes to the store looks at the list and buys what's on the list. And so like, that's a really nice way to like get what we need, but then share that note. But you can do this with students. So you can have students, you can have tasks for a student. Again, there's check boxes. If you want, you can have check boxes show up to check it off. And the to-do, you know, you can have a to-do list for students and you can like peek in and see like, how are they doing on the to-do list? Oh, nothing is checked off. I should touch base with them. Oh, they've checked everything off. I should also touch base with them. You know, again, you can share that. You can also share it amongst a group. If a group is working on a project, you can share a keep note with them and they can outline their steps and check them off as they go. So you can check in and see how they're doing. You can use it for taking notes. Allison and I do this a lot. We start a Google Keep note when we're in a meeting with somebody and then share it with each other. When that note gets too long though, because it almost always does, we maybe should not use Keep as often, Allison, because we always have too many notes. But when it gets really long, there's actually a button inside of Google Keep where it will copy what's in the Keep note. It'll copy it to a Google Docs. You've got a longer space to flesh out into something else. And then what's really nice about Keep is it's good for organizational skills. Every single person organizes differently. I'm a big fan of physical sticky notes. When I put it on a physical sticky note, I'm more likely to remember it. I can see it. It's a reminder for me. I work really well with physical sticky notes. Not everybody does. Some people really like to have a planner where they write stuff down. Some people really like to have it on their phone where they can see it anytime they want. So helping students kind of learn what is going to be the best organizational structure for them is really, really important. You know, we really try as educators to give students different options. We have them keep a planner for a while. You know, we show them different ways that they can organize. We have them keep binders, things like that. But again, everybody's brain works differently and everybody remembers things and processes things differently. And so Google Keep is a tool you can offer to students. They have access to this. It's an approved tool they can use. You just send them to keep.google.com and that will, you can kind of like play around. You can color code notes, all sorts of stuff. So it can be a really nice tool sometimes to give students as an option. And then again, if you build it into a project that kind of shows them what, you know, kind of models what that tool could be used for, that maybe that will be helpful to them in the future. Okay, I know we like sprinted through that. Chat check. So in the chat, I'm gonna have you go ahead and if you'd like to share an idea, how could you integrate tools like maps, Post-it notes, or arts and culture into a unit? Some of you have already been sharing some ideas. Shannon mentioned doing Jamboard for students to collaborate, share, and post homework solutions. So that's a pretty cool idea. But go ahead and put in the chat just like some things you're thinking about. Again, you're not committing. I'm not going to check in on you and be like, did you do it? But you know, what could you use a map for in your content area with the students you work with? What could you use arts and culture for in your area, your content area? What could you use Post-it notes for? That kind of stuff. A story web, it's a great idea. Yeah, using maps for directions. I am in love with maps to tell stories right now. That seems like such a cool, you know, having graded many students' work, like when you're like reading through, you know, the 60th paper that you've seen, if I was clicking through a map, I feel like it'd be much more interesting. Digital field trips, yeah. Ooh, the Silk Road on my maps, all sorts of things. Jamboard for small book club meetings, very cool. Virtual field trips, arts and culture to have physical ed students learn about where the Olympic Games began. Yes, yes. So see, it ties into everything. Arts and culture, arts and culture. If you walk away with nothing else, sheets and arts and culture. Finding artifacts that relate to a period of topics. Choosing, arresting art pieces and finding the commonality, looking for threads and themes and trends. I've seen actually math classes use arts and culture to look at like angles in artwork, all that kind of stuff. Really neat stuff. Plot earthquake and volcano locations to see, yeah, because you can visually see them like, oh, it is a ring. Now I know why it's called that, right? Very cool. So many good ideas. Map excavation sites. Arts for teaching preschoolers shapes and colors. Yes, all ages. Connecting music to context. Making a map of local biodiversity. What trees are in my neighborhood? Yeah, I saw an example actually of first graders using my maps where they put pins where different animals lived in different ecosystems. So yeah, all sorts of things, all ages it could work with. Whew. So many good ideas. I hope that you get a chance to scroll back through the chat and look and see at some of the ideas that have been shared, because there's a lot of really great ideas in there. like I said, this is my favorite session to run by far because I get to like take all your ideas and be like, guess what I heard in my last session? Great, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna really briefly touch on Google Classroom. Google Classroom is not the focus. It's not a complicated tool, but it's got a lot of possibilities. And so I'm actually at 1:15, I am doing a deeper dive workshop on Google Classroom. It's called Beginner's Guide to Google Classroom. It is unlimited participants. I can have up to 3,000 people in there. So if you were thinking about weren't sure what you're gonna do for your afternoon workshop, or if the one you wanted to be in this fall, come join mine. We're gonna talk about Google Classroom. Teachers in grades 3 through 12, the district is saying this year should have a Google Classroom. So if you're a teacher in grades 3 through 12, you may want to come and check that out. We also have webinars they'll post it. If you have another workshop you're headed to, we also have recordings of webinars posted to be able to learn more about Google Classroom. My workshop is not the only chance, but it is an opportunity, and I'll be recording that workshop as well. Just like I'm recording this one now, I'll record that workshop as well, so you can also watch it later if you'd like. But Google Classroom is basically a digital classroom space. It's a place to organize and collect stuff. So it's a place where you can assign things out and where you can collect things from students in a really organized way. It can help you streamline a lot of things. So for example, you can actually give a group a workspace inside of Classroom by assigning that thing only to specific people. So in Classroom, I can assign something only to specific kids, and only those kids can see it. And so that can actually give like a group a space to work, and other groups can't get into their documentary, that kind of stuff. Classroom allows you to make copies of a template. So I talked earlier about using Google Drawings for like drag and drop stuff, like the heart, the human heart activity with like dragging things around to label the heart. You can make your template, your heart with your different things for students to drag, and then tell Classroom, make a copy for everybody. So each person gets their own copy, and each person can only see their own copy. Nobody gets on anybody else's copy. And so Classroom will actually streamline that for you. You can also use Classroom to like peek into students' work. So like if I want to see how they're doing on their heart diagram, I can actually then like look into each student's work and see like, oh, how is Elaine doing? Okay, she's working on it. So you can peek into students' work in progress inside of Classroom as well. I have included 3 resources here. The webpage for educators, that's the same as the other ones. It's got resources that we've made, resources from Google, meant for teachers, and then resources from other teachers about like innovative, interesting things you can do in Classroom. The second bullet actually is pretty important. If you are, we created a document really to help you get up and going with Classroom. So again, if you've used Classroom before, like especially if you use it in the spring and you're like, I don't really know, do I start a new class? Do I just keep using the old one? I have assignments in there I liked. The guidance document for 2020 through 21, that's really to help you get started this school year. So it's like step 1, create a new class and archive the old one. Step 2, add topics. And so that's really going to be a good resource for you to kind of get started with like really easy, like step-by-step, here's how I start with my Google Classroom. And it's also got some best practices in there. I saw a question, can teachers include paras as teachers? Yes. Google Classroom can have up to 20 co-teachers is what they're called. So like I said, if you want to learn more about Google Classroom, if either you are going to use it or if you're going to be working with a teacher, if you're a para who's working with a teacher who's going to use it, feel free to join my session at 1:15. And then I also have a link there for a Google Classroom webpage for families. Again, that same resource to help families really navigate Classroom, like where's the turn-in button, that kind of stuff. So you can really give that support to families, and it can be translated because it's the district website. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of like cool us down a little bit. We just like ran a million miles a minute. I know, so much information. And again, I'm gonna bring up that norm that you are not supposed to master everything today. There is no test. I am not requiring you to know everything. If you want to have one good idea or one thing you want to explore in the future, like I'm thinking I might explore slides, then you have met the goals of this session. You're doing great. Like I said, we are going to have webinars on all these topics with the how-to part. This was just kind of like to start sparking some of those ideas of things you can do to really look at that equity of opportunity. What are you asking students to do with these tools besides just, type of paper and that kind of stuff? So I wanted to give some time to just kind of process and share some things in the chat. I wanted to give a space if you want to put any aha moments, like mind blown. You can use maps for storytelling, any of that kind of stuff. You can put that in the chat. If you have any like lingering deeper questions, just like things you're wondering, like I wonder if I could tell a story in Google Sheets. I don't know, like those kind of like deeper questions. Feel free to pop those into the slide deck so we can kind of hear what you're thinking about. And then at SFUSD, we often have a space for celebrations and appreciations when we do trainings or have meetings. And so I just wanted to give a space for that. I'm actually going to celebrate, share an appreciation that I really appreciate all the amazing ideas you shared. I am so excited. There's so many great ideas. I always feel really inspired in these sessions because I can see that, you know, you as teachers really are willing to adjust your practice and try new things. You're not scared to do that kind of stuff. And so I really appreciate all the ideas that were shared. I hope that you all got great ideas as well. Allison, did I see you unmuted because you wanted to say something?
I've got to run and get my lunchtime session going. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry that there's still some remaining questions that I haven't gotten to.
I will take care of those. Thank you so much for moderating.
We hope to see you all in office hours sometime soon. Bye.
Okay. So Allison is actually running one of our lunch activities. We've got a few different lunch activities. She's doing the cooking class that you can certainly swing by and see. We've got a walking group. We've got a dance like jam room, all sorts of stuff. And so feel free to check those out. I've got 4 minutes left in this session. I don't have anything else to share other than my next slide is a link to a bunch of resources. There it goes. So feel free to check those out. I'm going to spend some time answering questions in the chat. In the Q&A. So if you have questions in the Q&A, I'm going to get to those now. But I've covered everything I'm going to cover today. So you're also welcome to go ahead and dip out and move on to whatever you're doing for lunch today. If you're going to take a walk, if you're going to join Allison for a cooking class, whatever that is. So thank you so much for joining us. This is my favorite. This is so fun. So. You guys are all so nice. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it.